Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 558 of the Unpopular Podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular Podcast, not only asked to agree with me, I'm asked you to hear me out. I got hit. I was one of the people that got destroyed by snow. I hope that everyone that was affected by snow is okay and they're in a warm place. That's why I missed the last two episodes. It was where I'm staying, it hit tremendously. So, again, I hope everybody's okay. I hope that, if there was some need of recovery, I hope that they're able to recover. And I'm back. So let's get it. One lesson that people like to give when they talk about relationships, whether that's a work relationship, a platonic relationship, a romantic. One thing that people like to say is you don't burn bridges. One reason why you don't burn bridges is because you don't know who you're going to need in the future. You don't know whose influence, whose help you're going to need in the future to advance. Usually when they say that, it's about a job in a sense of, you never want to burn any bridges when you're leaving. I get that. I was one of those people who's like, well, if I don't never plan on going back, who cares? However, you're seeing what happens when you don't care about burning bridges, when you don't care about harvesting good, healthy relationships, when we're talking about Bill Belichick not making the Hall of Fame as a first ballot. Let's not get it twisted, bro. There is no greater coach in NFL history than Bill Belichick. As a head coach, he has 6 Super Bowls. As an assistant coach, he has 2 Super Bowls, 3-time AP Coach of the Year. He's on the 2000s All-Decade team, 2010s All-Decade team, 100th anniversary All-Decade team. Bill Belichick is the embodiment of winning when we talk about the sport of football. And honestly, when we talk about sports in general, there's not too many head coaches that you can put in the same realm as Bill Belichick. So, with all that, you'd think that Bill Belichick is a certified first ballot Hall of Famer, correct? I will say, if you just look at the resume, if the resume is all that you want to look at and all that you should look at, I will say, then yes, he is a first ballot Hall of Famer. There's not a coach in NFL history better than Bill Belichick. But let me remind you of who is the main who are the main voters when we talk about the Hall of Fame. It's media members. Media members are majority of the people that vote who should and should not be put in the Hall of Fame. And I also want to remind you guys of just the history that Bill Belichick has with the media. It's religious that Bill Belichick did not have the best of relationships with the media. He was oftentimes referred to as smug and standoffish and downright rude and mean when it came to the media. I think that when we talk about things like this, when we talk about Hall of Fame, the thing that should be number one on a voter's mind is what did they do on the field, or how did their impact affect the game? Obviously, Bill Belichick wouldn't be going to the Hall of Fame as a football player. He'd be going as a coach. But that's not always the case. You know, do I think Bill Belichick will make the Hall of Fame? Of course. I actually think he's probably going to make the Hall of Fame next go round. But on top of not making or on top of his relationship with the media. Bill Belichick also has a long list of cheating accusations when we talk about the game of football. And I'm only going to call them allegations out of respect because a lot of them, whether you talk about the Deflategate, whether you talk about recording practices before Super Bowls of the opponent, they have been proven as true. So there are a lot of people, and this is the time when you find stuff out like this. This is the time when you find stuff out, or this is the time when you find out who really looks at you as a legitimate coach, who really looks at your accomplishments legitimately, or who has a gripe to grind. There are people that can't get over the fact of Deflategate. There are people that can't get over the fact of recording opponents' practices before the Super Bowl, before AFC championships, before games. That is also on Bill Belichick's coat. Again, if you, I know I hear a lot of people talking about say, well, the committee, the committee, the media, they're obviously saying that Bill Belichick not making the Hall of Fame is solely because they feel like Tom Brady carried him. No, no. Bill Belichick's not in the Hall of Fame is because he made it a point to essentially destroy his relationship with the very people that are voting for him to be in the Hall of Fame. There's going to be a point where it's undeniable that he has to be in it, which is why I think probably next year he's going to be in it. But this is essentially, whether you believe it should or should not be the case, this is essentially the media saying F you to Bill Belichick after all the times he essentially said it to them. Again, I'm not saying that is correct. I'm not saying that is right, but this is what we're seeing. If you look at those accolades, he has the most Super Bowl wins with 8, most Super Bowl wins as a head coach 6, most Super Bowl appearances 12, most Super Bowl appearances as a head coach 9, most playoff wins as a head coach 31, most divisional championships as a head coach at 17, most playoff appearances as a head coach with 19, which is tied for the most. All those are NFL records. But again, it goes back to what we started this episode with. You have to be cautious about what bridges you burn. And not saying that you don't or you're not supposed to burn bridges, not saying that it's just automatic doom and gloom if you burn bridges, but understand that there once you burn a bridge, you have to take what comes with that. You have to you have to understand that that might be a person you need in the future. And what you do in the present definitely has effect on the future at times, and that's what we're seeing with Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick was never ever nice to the media. And the media just so happened to be the people that has to either vote him in or out of the Hall of Fame. And on top of their relationship with him and the cheating situation, they voted no. Again, I have all the faith in the world that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. You know, this kind of brings on a broader a larger topic. Um Not just who should be voting, but what should matter. I think that's always been the conversation, and that's always been the case when we talk about certain individuals in the Hall of Fame. One of the names that is synonymous with this topic is Terrell Owens. Terrell Owens is arguably a top 3 to 4 wide receiver ever. But you see how long it took for him to make the Hall of Fame solely based on his antics. Solely based on the fact that he didn't have the best relationship with media, he didn't have the best relationship with some of his teammates and some of the teams, and some of the teams that he was on, it was nasty exit, but it's undoubtable, or it's not a doubt that he was one of the greatest wide receivers to ever live. But you saw, because of that relationship that he has, you saw how long it took for him to get in the Hall of Fame, to the point where he had to he had to make his own gold jacket. And the relationship was so stained between the Hall of Fame and Terrell Owens that he didn't even attend the Hall of Fame. He did it at like his local high school or something like that, local college or something. The question has always been what should matter, because if personal relationships, the way that I treat people or the way that people are treated, if that is such a huge proponent, then why does anybody care, or why would anybody care about what I do on the field? If at the end of the day, and as we're seeing with Bill Belichick, my relationship with you is affected more than my accolades. Again, I think that it should, how you treat people should affect your status on if you should or should not be in the Hall of Fame. But I do think that your on field or your coaching accolades should matter more. It's going to be fascinating when we have the conversation about Antonio Brown, because if you look at the antics, if you look at everything that's happened off the field, which I believe that he will be one of the few poster child or poster children of not getting in the Hall of Fame because of everything that happened off the field. Because on the field, you can argue he's a top 5 wide receiver of all time. Some of the seasons that he had with Pittsburgh is Hall of Fame worthy. He's a Super Bowl champion. Antonio Brown is going to go, or will go down, as one of the greatest wide receivers we've ever seen. But he will also go down and probably not touch the Hall of Fame because of everything that happened off the field, which is going to then spark this conversation yet again. Because does I thought the Hall of Fame is what you do on the field, not off. You know? Obviously, I'm not putting Bill Belichick in that Antonio Brown category, but what I am saying is this: the accolades is what's eventually going to get him in the Hall of Fame, being undoubtedly the greatest coach in NFL history, especially when you talk about accomplishments. But his relationship with the media and the numerous times you've been caught cheating is why he is not going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Now, if this happens again, like next year he doesn't get in, then I'm sure the conversation will be much louder. But as of right now, he's on the outside looking in. Speaking of outside looking in, this portion of the episode is going to kind of be outdated. I want to have, again, I missed the last 2 episodes. I apologize for that. And I wasn't really able to talk about what we saw in the conference championships, both the AFC and the NFC conference championships. And I kind of I'm not going to have a deep dive about what we saw in the game, but what I did want to talk about is a couple things. Let's first talk about Sam Darnold. We talk about poster children. We talk about poster childs. We just talked about Antonio Brown. We just talked about Terrell Owens. We just talked about Bill Belichick. Sam Darnold is the poster child to fit matters. Sam Darnold is the poster child to never giving up. Sam Darnold is the poster child to just because something looks one way doesn't necessarily mean it is that way. Or I'll say, isn't always going to be that way. The road to the Super Bowl was the most unlikely road to the Super Bowl that you can ever imagine when we talk about Sam Darnold. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, if you really haven't been ingratiated and you really haven't seen the road that Sam Darnold was on, you're going to look and say, Jay, he was a number one overall pick. Of course, a number one overall pick is going to make the Super Bowl, right? Well, yeah, but he was a number one overall pick to the New York Jets. And for the longest, he even admitted that he was seeing ghosts. For people that don't know what seeing ghosts means, is when you think there's somebody there that's not, and you kind of rush yourself, or you're just uncomfortable at what you're doing because you're just the game is so fast, and you think you see something that you make mistakes. He was widely considered for a good time, especially when we um talk about his time in New York. He was widely considered one of the biggest busts in NFL history. His career was essentially over. But then you go to Carolina. Doesn't really work there. Then you go to San Francisco. Doesn't really work there. Doesn't really work as a starter, I'll say, there. Then you go to Minnesota. Have one of the best seasons, actually, up to this point, have the best season of your career. Look like a bona fide first round pick. Looks like you could be a franchise player. However, the team just so happens to draft a quarterback the year before you pop. And they're like, you know what? You're going to be expensive, and we want to see what we have in this young quarterback. We took him first round, and we're going to have to let you go. Oh, I'm sorry. He was a third overall pick, not a first. Third overall pick in 2018. So Minnesota goes, you know what? We're okay with letting you walk. Then you go to undoubtedly the toughest division in football this year in the NFC West. You have to contend with the 49ers. You have to contend with the LA Rams. And of course, you are on the Seattle Seahawks. And not only do you continue to have a great season or add on to the season that you had in Minnesota, now in Seattle, but you lead this team to the Super Bowl in historic fashion. I told this isn't a I told you so moment, but this is going to be an I told you so moment. Well, yes, I did, and I was wrong about it, but I did say that the Rams were going to win the NFC West, especially with a healthy Matthew Stafford, because remember, he was dealing with back issues at the start of the season or before the season started with Puka Nacua, with Devontae Adams. I said that the dark horse team, not just in the NFC West, but the dark horse team in the NFC to not only win their division, but to but could vie for a Super Bowl appearance was the Seattle Seahawks. I loved the coach that they have. I loved the defense that they had getting Demarcus Lawrence or uh Demarcus Lawrence, having Leonard. Like it fit is important. I think and this is no shot to those organizations, but I think that when you start your it's history does matter when we talk about some of these things. Obviously, it can change in the present, but history does matter. And when you're talking about the New York Jets that has never had the reputation of developing a good quarterback, developing the right quarterback, developing a quarterback correctly. When you go to Carolina with while at the time the only accolade they had to their name was Cam Newton. When you go to the San Francisco 49ers and they already have Brock Purdy there, so you're just a designated backup. When you go to Minnesota, have the best season of your career yet, and still they still pick somebody else over you. This is not supposed to happen. I mean, think about it. Number one overall seed in the NFC. In your road to the Super Bowl, you beat two divisional opponents. You beat the 49ers and you beat the Rams. And on top of that, because of Sam Darnold's greatness, you see a career year from Jackson Smith and Jigba. You see a career year from Kenneth Walker. Fit for sure matters. And while I'll wait to give my prediction on who wins the Super Bowl, what I will say is Seattle has been arguably the best team in football all season. And it's no shocker that that is alongside their incredible defense. Sam Darnold is the catalyst to that. Just like last year, Minnesota was one of the best teams in football, and it just so happened that Sam Darnold was at the helm of that one. Again, I think the beauty in this also is that a lot of people don't get this opportunity. Yes, obviously we're talking about Super Bowl, but a lot of people don't get this opportunity to be in the right fit. A lot of people don't get this opportunity to be to have the position of being in the right organization. A lot of times, or something that we see a lot, they're in a bad situation, and that bad situation messes them up royally to the point where once they do get into a good organization, they can't get the stench. They can't unlearn what they learned in those bad situations. So you're just I'm not gonna say a ruined player, but it's hard for you to really build your legacy. It's hard to really build or change your dynamic. Sam Darnold was left for dead in New York. And honestly, the only reason why he kept getting chances up until Minnesota was he was a third overall pick. But now that third overall pick, Sam Darnold, is one game away from hoisting the trophy that everyone goes for. So congratulations to the Seahawks for beating the Rams 31-27. Now let me talk about the Rams for a brief second, seeing as though their season's over. They have the MVP and Matthew Stafford, or probably have the MVP. I know it hasn't been announced yet, but it's likely that they have the MVP. And in this game, in the NFC Championship, Matthew Stafford played incredible. 22 for 50 or 22 for 35, 374 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, only 1 sack. Puka Nacua had a great game. 9 receptions for 165 yards. Devontae Adams, 4 receptions for 89 yards, both of which had a touchdown. This was a great game from people that needed to have a great, or people that you expected and needed to have a great game, i.e., Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams. But I said this, and it's been said before, so this isn't like an original idea or original thought. But one thing that the playoffs are always going to do is expose your weaknesses. It exposes what you're not good at. The thing, and this is what makes teams, or this is how teams advance, are your strengths higher? Are your strengths stronger than your weaknesses? That is the ultimate game when we talk about the playoffs. There is not a perfect team. There has never been a perfect team. In fact, the closest thing that we have gotten to a perfect team was what, the 16-0 New England Patriots that had Tom Brady, that had obviously Bill Belichick, that had Randy Moss, that team. And even that team didn't win the Super Bowl. There's not a perfect team. Every team has a flaw. The Seattle Seahawks have a flaw. We're going to talk about the Patriots. They have a flaw. However, are your strengths strong enough to blanket those flaws? And the Rams' strength has been obviously their offense and their defensive front. They have one of the best defensive front in football, and their offense is explosive, which is why Matthew Stafford is likely to win this year's MVP. However, what has been the weakness for the Rams all season? Their secondary. Their secondary has been their weakness. However, it hasn't come back to bite them. Their secondary didn't didn't let them down essentially until it did. And even I have to rephrase that because it let them down several times. However, because their defensive front was so good and you're able to get to the quarterback, and because Matthew Stafford was great and probably win a Super Bowl. I mean, no, probably win the MVP. I'm sorry. And because Puka Nacua might win the Offensive Player of the Year. Because Devontae Adams, when healthy, was one of the best second options in football. You were able to bank on that more than that secondary. However, as we saw against the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC Championship, you're going up against a superior offense, just like the Rams is a superior offense. And Sam Darnold, 25 for 36, 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Jackson Smith and Jigba, 10 receptions for 153 yards. Both defenses are going to burn the tape on this game, but what I will say is it's important to understand that no team is perfect. And your weaknesses will get exposed royally in the playoffs. It's just how do you handle it? The Rams have been able to handle their weakness, which has been their secondary all season, very well until you got to a team that has absolutely no problem exploiting your weaknesses. And as you see, that other team, i.e., the Seattle Seahawks, are now making their way and firmly in the Super Bowl. While you, Rams, are now stuck with a lot more questions than you expected to be stuck with at the end of the season, i.e., yes, this was Matthew Stafford's best season, probably win his first regular season MVP. But what happens now? Is he gonna come back? You know what I'm saying? You're gonna have to cut some type of salary. Where does that come from? How do you retain someone like Puka Nakua and retain someone like Matthew Stafford and retain someone like Devontae Adams and retain someone like Kyron Williams and retain someone like Blake Corum while clearly needing to fix that secondary? These are all questions now that have arose because you did not get it done, or your weaknesses, your strengths were not able to carry your weaknesses this game. Speaking of that, and this is going to bleed into obviously the AFC Championship. I know that analytics now plays a huge part in all the sports. You know, maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was almost taboo that you'd go for it on 4th and 5 or 4th and 3. It was almost taboo that you'd be in the red zone and it'd be 4th and 2 and you don't send the kicker out for a field goal. That was about almost 5, 6 years ago. But analytics, albeit is important, but what one thing that analytics can't do is understand the feel of the game. And when I mean feel of the game, understand where the game is, understand um just what is happening, what the environment is giving you. We're obviously talking about the Seattle Seahawks um winning and beating the LA Rams, but there were a couple instances where the Rams were in the red zone, and instead of kicking it, they go for it. Now, hindsight is 2020, right? Um, if they go for it and make it, right, you don't. We're not having this conversation. More than likely, the Rams are on their way to the Super Bowl outside the Seahawks, but they did make it. I know for sure there were two instances where they're in the red zone, and instead of kicking the field goal, they uh they go for it. They don't get it. No points. And you look, they lost by 4. On top of the fact of they could have just went for 1. They could have just kicked the field goal, and the whole last drive of the game is much different. You don't have to now go and try to get a touchdown. You just need to get in field goal range, which changes the entire way that you play the last minutes of the game. So again, I'm not saying analytics is bad, but what I'm saying is analytics can't doesn't take into account, okay, how successful have we been in the fourth down? How good, who has the momentum? What is the best? That's it's definitely a fine line. And I'm necessarily not saying that the Rams would have won if they didn't kick that field goal. I think it was what, before halftime. But what I am saying is I'm sure 30 to 31 with what, 30 seconds left, 45 seconds left in the game, you're calling that much differently than you would 27 to 31, which, like I said, bleeds over into the AFC Championship when the Patriots beat the Broncos 10-7. What analytics don't do or doesn't do is take into account who's playing. Also, obviously, it doesn't take into account momentum, weather, or or stuff like that. But it also doesn't take into account who's playing. And what I mean by that is it's on the coaching staff to understand what your players are good and not good at, and what your players are capable of and not capable of. Not saying that, one player can't do this or that, but I don't expect a Joe Flacco team to be quarterback option heavy, you know? Because Joe Flacco just isn't he's not a mobile quarterback. Just like I wouldn't expect a Lamar Jackson team to just have pocket passes. That just doesn't make sense. Going into the AFC Championship, Denver knows that your quarterback that got you there, your quarterback that played the whole season, your quarterback that got you to a 14-3 schedule or a 14-3 record, your quarterback that helped you beat Josh Allen and the Patriots, or I'm sorry, Josh Allen and the Bills, he is not playing. Instead, your starting quarterback is a quarterback that has not thrown a NFL pass in almost 2 years, or maybe even over 2 years. So I would think and I would hope that the coaching staff would be able to put that player, put the team in the best position to win. And what's even funnier is that team had momentum, damn near all of the momentum. We're going to talk about the Patriots in a second, but the Denver Broncos had all the momentum. I said that the Patriots won 10-7. Well, there was an instance where the Denver Broncos were in the red zone and could have went up 10-0. And they also understood that while the game started, the weather wasn't the greatest, but it was going to get much worse by the second, I mean, no, by halftime and the rest of the game. They knew that a snowstorm was on the way, which means I think it's best to capitalize on the at least better weather that you have now than you will have in the second half of the game. Meaning, if you're in the red zone, if you're in a fourth down situation and there's opportunity to kick the ball, why don't you go for it then instead of maybe doing what they did and not kicking it and waiting to the second half of the game where you can barely see the damn field because it's so much snow, and there's no shocker that your kicker, I think Will Lutz, missed two kicks. This game was won on that fourth down. I think it was 4th and 5. The Broncos, I think it was either the first or second quarter. The Broncos had all the momentum. Drake May couldn't do nothing. The defense, Jarrett Stidham was looking okay up until that point. He had a what I think 50-yard bomb or something, but up until that, Jarrett Stidham looked cool, look all right. The game was won on that. I think it was 4th and 5, where instead of kicking it and going up 10-0, you then do go for it and you cut off half the field because you send Jarrett Stidham. In fact, what makes the play much worse is you run the same exact play that scores you a touchdown maybe 2 drives before. The same exact play. Mind you, you're in the AFC Championship going up against one of the best defenses in football, and you think that you're going to be able to run the same play in a span of 2 drives? So then they didn't get it. Patriots go down, score. Patriots then go down, score a field goal. And Jarrett Stidham looked just like a quarterback that ain't thrown an NFL pass in 2 years. Was had the interception, had the fumble that definitely should have been a touchdown. The refs messed that one up. Patriots now go on to the Super Bowl. Broncos, who had home field advantage, and the way that their defense was playing, definitely could have won that game. They lose because I'm not even just going to put on Jarrett Stidham, even though he was bad in the second half, but you didn't put him in the best position. And when he did put y'all in the best position, the play calling and the decision making by the coaching staff kind of ruined that. Let me talk about Sean Payton for a brief second, because let me talk about him for a second. We all have an Achilles heel. We all have a thing that brings down our value. That doesn't necessarily mean that that thing is always going to rear its head, or that thing is always going to, you know, depreciate our value, but we all have a thing. Some people thing is, I don't know, they're too full of themselves. Some people's thing is, I don't know, their breath stink or something like that. I don't know. But we all have a thing that other people would assume, or other people would say could bring down their stock. When we talk about Sean Payton, it's not just the fact of he runs such a tight ship, right? That's not necessarily bad, but there's a lot of times when the person development falls by the wayside. And what I mean by that is Sean Payton is a great coach. When we just talk about the X's and O's, when we talk about putting a team in a good position to win, he's a great coach. But he's also proven that he's not necessarily a great players coach. He's not necessarily a great person to develop a relationship with. It seems like outside of Drew Brees, there hasn't been a quarterback that he's had a glowing relationship with. Now, I'm not saying that, Bo Nix or anybody hates him, but when you see what happened with Jarrett Stidham and you not putting him, I don't know, which goes back to the Seattle conversation. I don't know if it's analytics or what, but you didn't put Jarrett Stidham in the best position to win on top of everything. And it was well documented, everything that happened with Russell Wilson. It just seems like Sean Payton just doesn't get the human aspect of it all. Which also now talking about this whole Bo Nick situation, disclosing personal injury personal injury information to the media without talking to Bo Nix. And honestly, from what Bo Nix is saying, giving wrong information as the head coach. On top of the fact that, and I can be the only person on this hill, but I feel like Sean Payton, like, Sean Payton just rides that Saints Super Bowl as far as that tractor can take them. Just like damn near, well, I'm going to love him to death. But Kendrick Perkins in that 2008 championship with the Celtics, I've never seen someone ride one championship that hard. I've never seen a team. Doc Rivers is one of them as well. Everyone's going to say Doc Rivers is a great coach just because he has that 2000 what, 8 or 9 championship. Sean Payton is the same way, bro. Sean Payton, he had the great Drew Brees. His team was 14-3 this year. Now, I will chalk it up to Bo Nix, but he also had an opportunity with Jarrett Stidham. I'm not saying that Sean Payton is a bad coach, but what I'm saying is there has been several occasions where you've had an opportunity to just at least get back to a Super Bowl, and you couldn't do it. He's only been to one, might I add. Only one. Now, albeit he did win that one, but still, we're going to talk about New England in about 10 seconds. But my final thought with Denver was not having Bo Nix, even though I do believe Bo Nix, I believe Bo Nix would have obviously put Denver in a better situation than Jarrett Stidham. But I also believe that the coaching staff, you knew that the second half was going to be rough because of a damn snowstorm that affected damn near the entire east and northwest coast. And Midwest, all the way in Denver. And you tried to get cute. And now you're at home with arguably actually, it wasn't arguably, with probably the best defense that was remaining in the playoffs at the time. Which now, let's talk about the Patriots for a second. Let me get this is going to sound like hate topic out the way. I wholeheartedly stand on the idea that you play with who's in front of you. Whatever your schedule is, you make the best of your schedule. And sometimes your schedule is favorable, sometimes your schedule is not. It's just how do you capitalize on that schedule? And it's been well documented that the Patriots have had the easiest schedule in over 20 years. It's been well documented that every single team that if you just want to look at their playoff run, every single team had a major flaw that the Patriots were able to capitalize, whether that's the Chargers and their entire offensive line being out, or their two best offensive linemen being out, and Justin Herbert being Justin Herbert in the playoffs, at least up to this point. or CJ Stroud not just football blind and not knowing who the hell you're throwing the ball to. CJ Stroud had damn near 15 turnovers in one game to the Denver Broncos not having their starting quarterback because he's the first starting quarterback in NFL history to break their ankle the second to last play of the game. That's luck. You know, when people hear me talk about luck, it's kind of viewed as a bad thing. Like, oh, you know, luck, luck. You're not a good team if you have luck on your side. I think, on the contrary, there's not been a team in the NFL. Now, obviously, there are more dominant teams, but I can't name. Like, think about it, man. Luck plays a part in everything that we do. Or let me not let me shrink a little bit. Let me go micro. You can be as dominant as a team as possible. I talk about them a lot, and I'm not going to stay on them for long. But the Golden State Warriors, 2017 to 2019, they had luck on their side. You know, J.R. Smith not knowing what time was. Uh, Kawhi Leonard and the ankle. Not saying that those teams were won or not, but that goes into the you never know pile. Even as dominant as the Eagles were last year on their way to the Super Bowl, if it wasn't for Puka Nakua dropping a pass that was a part of possibly the game-winning drive, the Rams were going to beat the Eagles at home, might I add. Or maybe if the weather was better, because it was a damn snowstorm in that game. Yes, I think that luck has played a major part in why we're seeing the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl. But there's a lot of people that get lucky and not able to capitalize on it. There's a lot of people that have an easy schedule and not able to capitalize on it. There's a lot of teams that you would look at and say that is better than the Patriots. They're clearly not here. Do I think that Drake May has been great all season? Hell no. I'm sorry. Back up. I think Drake May has been great all season. I don't think he's been great in this playoffs. In fact, I think he's been a huge detriment to the Patriots in the playoffs. However, the Patriots defense has been incredible. And that's one thing I will give credit to. As much as we talk about the easy schedule, as much as we talk about the breaks that the Patriots have gotten, they have also faced the three best defenses in the playoffs. Now four, because they're going up against Seattle. The Chargers defense is one of the best. The I think the Texans defense was the best, and then the second or third best is Denver, and they beat all of them. Again, I'm going to wait to give my prediction on who win the Super Bowl, but what I will say is this. What happens when luck meets opportunity? You have to seize it. That's something that, and a lot of people said I was wrong. A lot of the fan base said that I was off. A lot of people said, how can I say this? And I'm a fan. I look at this year's Patriots the same way I looked at last year's Commanders. We ran into a lot of luck until we didn't. Until we ran into a harder schedule, i.e., this year, until we ran into teams that were healthy, i.e., this year, and you saw what happened. I can feel how I feel about the Patriots. I think obviously we don't know. I know a lot of people are saying that Matthew Stafford's probably going to win, but number two in voting, or possibly number one, is Drake May. I think he had an incredible season. I think this Patriots defense is one of the best defenses. As much as people don't, as much as everything that's happened in in Buffalo and in Texas, I was even skeptical, but I think the Stephon Diggs, it started off slow. The Stephon Diggs marriage to New England started off slow as hell, but he's been a great part of this team. Ramondre Stevenson had a damn fumbling problem. That's gone now. And I think this is the first team in NFL history to go undefeated on the road. I understand why people are saying that this is the team of destiny. Well, obviously they'll have to. I'll wait to give my predictions, obviously, but obviously they have to finish the job. But yeah, we'll see. But congratulations to the New England Patriots for beating the Denver Broncos 10-7. Now, remember, I said that this episode was going to be a little bit outdated. Just like a lot of y'all's cars, it took me a minute to 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 get shoveled out, you know? And one thing that I missed that I wanted to talk about. I didn't want to talk about them back to back because it happened it happened 15 days ago. But there is a difference between the NFL Hall of Fame and the College Football Hall of Fame. Obviously, the College Football Hall of Fame just looks at what you did in college football. And there are also some similarities. One similarity is yearly there's new inductees and stuff that gets put into both the NFL Hall of Fame and the College Football Hall of Fame. Well, this year, one of the glaring names that didn't make the College Football Hall of Fame was Cam Newton. And sort of like, at least in the same realm, because for people, that only come to these episodes and look at the timestamps, which I do appreciate you guys. Look at the timestamps and only click on the topic that they want to hear. For people that didn't hear what I talked about with Bill Belichick, I believe Bill Belichick's relationship with the media and how rocky it was his entire career, along with the cheating scandals, is why he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer. Cam Newton was never, especially in college, he was never disrespectful to the media. In fact, he was almost a media darling. However, there are so many people, as we're seeing with these committees, there are so many people that can't get over what happened in Florida. There are so many people that can't get over the fact of the stolen laptop, the fact that he was, quote, unable to beat out Tim Tebow to become Florida's starting quarterback. No one really, or they're just completely closing their eyes to the fact that Cam Newton won a national championship in JUCO. He also went to Auburn, who didn't have the best team at all, and also won a national championship. The fact that in 2010, Cam Newton had one of the greatest individual seasons we have ever seen from a player. And here's why that's so important. Because if you're great, you only get what, 3 seasons in college football. If you're one of them, you only get 3 seasons. So if you have one great season or one historic season, that holds a lot of weight. My thing is, Cam Newton essentially had two of them, one of which was Justin Juco. But people still cannot get over the stolen laptop. They still cannot get over the what happened in the dismissal, quote unquote, in Florida. And they also can't get over, I'm not going to go into detail, what happened with Cam Newton's dad, which is also why Cam Newton's dad was not welcome at the college football awards when he won his Heisman. Obviously, nobody's going to put this on the same level. But I think if you just look at the product on the field, Cam Newton not making the 2026 College Football Hall of Fame. I'm not talking about regulars Hall of Fame, which I think I'm not going to say he should be a first ballot, but I think Cam Newton deserves to be in the NFL Hall of Fame, seeing as though he is one of the greatest dual quarterbacks we've ever seen. But Cam Newton not being a first ballot college football Hall of Famer is on the same level of Bill Belichick not being a first ballot NFL Hall of Famer, because you'd be hard pressed to show me a better season in college football by an individual player than one of Cam Newton. I'm not saying there weren't better seasons, but I'm almost sure the people that had those better seasons are first ballot Hall of Famers. At some point, you got to get over it. At some point, you have to respect what's on the field, which again, I'm very curious to see. I talked about it with Bill Belichick. I'm very curious to see, and I'm very eager to see these conversations about Antonio Brown once his Hall of Fame, once he's up for the Hall of Fame, because you're really going to see what people value. Or do you value what you should? Do you value more of what happened on the field? Because if that's the case, Antonio Brown is a first ballot Hall of Famer for sure. Or do you have to take into consideration what happened off the field, which is exactly what happened to T.O. But T.O. didn't have half the stuff that Antonio Brown had. So we'll see. But to put a pin on this segment, or to put a bow on it, there should be no reason why. I don't know where the debates are being had. Cam Newton had one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen from a college football player. He should be a first ballot Hall of Famer in the College Football Hall of Fame. We can have the debates and everything for the NFL Hall of Fame, but when we talk about college, there should be no debate. And I'm confused as to why we're having this conversation, seeing as though he didn't even make it first ballot, which is crazy to me. But we'll see. I didn't want to be the one. Look, okay, okay. I'm not always right. All right, I'm not. I'm not always right, but it does feel good when I am right. You know, one of the things that I said. Now, I didn't give it a date, but one of the things that I said is one thing we have to monitor this year is how long it's going to take for Giannis Antetokounmpo to get to the point where he's done with Milwaukee, to get to the point where he's so fed up with the organization that he either requests a trade or a trade happens. And shocker, didn't even make it to a trade deadline. When you're playing up to a level of greatness that isn't widely seen in the league, your patience runs very thin. I promise you that. And when you see moves after moves after moves after moves that your organization does that doesn't equate to winning, that doesn't equate to maximizing your talents, at some point you get tired. At some point you get frustrated. At some point you're either going to A, just shut up and take it, pause, or you're going to force your way to make the situation better, whether that's remove yourself from that situation or try to bring somebody on. I'm not saying that. Yeah, I think Damian Lillard I, I don't think that Damian Lillard and Giannis pairing was a championship caliber team player, but I do think. I mean, we saw them win the NBA Cup, the in season tournament. I do believe that they would have fared much better if both players were healthy in the playoffs. Again, I'm not saying they would have won a championship, but they would have been better. And it's also a trend that we're seeing. Once somebody's done with an organization, they just don't care anymore. I'm not saying like there's obviously a level of professionalism, but that's when you start. I mean, in the span of a week, Giannis called out his teammates twice. That doesn't usually happen when everything is peaches and cream. But when you pay Miles Turner as much as you pay him, and he hasn't really done much. When your second option is Kyle Kuzma or or Kevin Porter Jr., like come on now. And like I said, we didn't even make it to trade deadline, and Giannis is already available, and it's looking like that Golden State is favored to get him. Let me tell you something, Golden State. You know, just like I know, just like Giannis knows, just like Steph Curry knows. It's very rare that a an opportunity like this comes your way. It's very rare that you have a top 3 to 4 player in the league available and you have some of the resources that the other team wants. They want expiring contracts, young stars, or young potential in draft picks, all of which Golden State has. You have an expiring contract in Jimmy Butler. You also have an expiring contract in Moses Moody. You have expiring, or you have Jonathan Kuminga. Bruh, if it comes out that this deal does not get done because of Brandon Pazinski, y'all were unwilling to trade Brandon Pazinski. All I'm saying is that's the bed that you laid in. We're talking about an NBA champion, NBA Finals MVP, 2-time regular season MVP, 10-time All Star, All Star Game MVP, 7-time All NBA first team, 2-time All NBA second team, Defensive Player of the Year, all 4-time All Defensive first team, 1-time All Defensive second team, Most Improved Player, NBA Cup champion, NBA Cup MVP, and a player that is he was drafted in 2013 and already is on the All NBA 75 anniversary team. I said this, I think, last episode. You can't get past 3 when we talk about the best players in the NBA and not hear Giannis's name. You have to know both if you're Milwaukee that I feel like we've played. I feel like Giannis has played his last game in Milwaukee, which is also something that Giannis self-diagnosed himself and say, "Yeah, I ain't gonna be playing." Yes, I think he's hurt. I think he is hurt, but I also think when a player comes out and says before the media or before not before the media, before the team doctors, before the coaches, when he comes out and say, "Yeah, I'm not gonna be playing," he's played his last game here. Golden State has a golden opportunity to at least maximize the last of the Steph Curry years because they have not done a good job. And to be honest with you, 2022 was a blimp. P.S. Did you know that blimps? There's only like 20 or 23 like blimps in the world. Fun fact of the day. But like I said, um, it, it was when you're playing as great as Giannis is playing, it's only a matter of time. And he's built in a way of he even said it. He always wants to be in contention to winning. Uh, it shouldn't be a shock that that player wants out. So Golden State again. I don't know if the reports are right, but oh, excuse me. I don't know if the reports are right, but it's saying that Golden State is favored to get him. You better figure it out. On top of that, Giannis is only how old is Giannis Antetokounmpo? Giannis is only 31 years old, which means that he can get another max contract, which means that you can have a corner piece for your team after Steph is gone. Because Steph is what, 37, 38. We'll see though, but this should be shocking to absolutely nobody. So, um, you know what's something else? Speaking of shocking to nobody, I think people kind of have forgotten what the Pro Bowl is. I think people have kind of forgotten what the goal of the Pro Bowl is. While, yes, the goal of the Pro Bowl, one goal of the Pro Bowl is to showcase the talent of the league, to showcase the talent of the NFL, the best of the best, if you will. Another reason for the Pro Bowl is to generate ratings, generate eyes, generate um engagement, discussion around the league. So when you see people that are hating, when you see people that are upset that Shedeur Sanders, who had a rookie season of 1,400 yards, 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and a 18.9 QBR, is a Pro Bowler, people are upset with that. Not understanding, and I'm not saying that they're on the same level. Before I make this statement, I'm not saying they're on the same level. And we're going to talk about the WNBA in a second, but why do you think the WNBA clings so heavily to Caitlin Clark promotion? Because they understand that she is the most popular player in the league by far. I'm not saying the best player, but the most popular. Well, in the NFL, you're right now healthy. Shedeur Sanders is probably the most popular player in football that is also willing to do this. Josh Allen, he has a broken foot apparently. Joe Burrow, I don't know what he got going on. I don't even know if he's playing. I don't know. Lamar Jackson, if I was Lamar Jackson, I probably wouldn't do it. After all the injuries, not making the playoffs, I probably wouldn't do it. Patrick Mahomes, he's out with injury. The most popular available player is Shedeur Sanders. And they picked him to generate views, because that's one thing that the Pro Bowl has been a steady decline when we talk about popularity, when we talk about viewership, because just people don't care about it. Well, I'm sure people are going to talk, people are going to watch just to see Shedeur Sanders. Hell, the reason why I'm talking about it now, the reason why people are so upset, they're having conversations about Shedeur Sanders. Look, whether I feel he did or did not deserve to be a Pro Bowler, he's one of them. And that opportunity doesn't come around a lot. Hell, we talked about Joe Flacco earlier. Joe Flacco is a Pro Bowler. This is Joe Flacco, who was a Super Bowl champion. This is Joe Flacco's first Pro Bowl. In fact, Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco has been in the league since 2008, and this year is his first Pro Bowl. So what I'm saying is, it doesn't happen for everybody. So cherish it. I'm happy for him. Again, whether I feel you deserve it or not, that doesn't matter. He's a Pro Bowler. Shout out to Shedeur Sanders. And I'm not hating when I say the main reason why he's a Pro Bowler is to generate conversation, generate views, generate eyes. We know what this is. I put money once all the Pro Bowl social media posts start hitting. Just count how many of them involve Shedeur Sanders. I promise you, or Deion Sanders. It's gonna be a lot, which is perfectly fine. Shout out to Shedeur Sanders for making the Pro Bowl, man. And lastly, before we go, something very quick. I just felt like I should say it. I don't think the WNBA understands that, I guess it's the WNBA PA, is serious about this potential lockout. And this is also why I said this is kind of an outdated episode, because the WNBA released their schedule without knowing if they're going to have a schedule or not, because they're actively in a contract dispute with their player, or contract negotiation with their players in the WNBA PA. And I haven't seen one video, one article that says that talks are going swell. So you release your schedule, which shout out to them because I did like the jersey. The Portland Fire released their jerseys and everything. I don't know if y'all finna have a season, or at least not have a season on time. So half of them games may not happen. But I hope it happens. But I mean, I guess y'all are meeting on Monday, but I don't, again, there's nothing that I've seen to makes me think, or there's nothing that I've heard in this entire negotiation process that says that Monday is the day where stuff's gonna get done. I don't know. But then again, you could cave like the Democrats did, and you know, who knows? I don't know. But there you have it. That's been today's episode of the Unpopular Podcast. I truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want a Popular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, there's a link in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. I'm trying to grow the podcast as much as I can, and I cannot do it without you guys' help. So if you like the content, if you hear me saying this, if you're at this point of the episode and you're not subscribed, I don't know what to tell you, bro. Please tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend to subscribe. It means a lot. That also goes for the DSPs, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Pandora. I'm trying to reach as many sectors as I can. I'm trying to grow the podcast unilaterally, and I cannot do it without you guys' help. So please, please, please follow, subscribe, rate, comment, share, all the works. It means a lot. For my socials, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, I post pretty much daily. I haven't done it the last few days because, again, I've been under snow, just like majority of the East Coast. But, the reels are going to be back, and the post and everything's going to be back. So please, please follow, please subscribe. It means a lot. I don't mind debating. I don't mind going back and forth. Just leave your comments, leave your opinions obviously in the comment section. Keep it respectful, and I don't mind going back and forth. It just means that you have an opinion and you're listening to me, both of which I appreciate. So do not leave a comment if you don't follow. It's like, what are we doing, bro? I appreciate you guys, though. Until next time, much love.